joined by Krinza from Ankr. Hi, Krinza.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Before we went live, you happened to share that it's very, very late where you are, and so I deeply
Yeah.
appreciate you for taking the time, especially during what would otherwise be a normal time to sleep. So I'm deeply grateful. This is, just to set the context of where we are, the Front End Wednesday stream. Every Wednesday, we talk about front end development in the Web3 space and talk about challenges, solutions, tooling that front end devs might want to be aware of. So, you're joining from Ankr, and I'll let you set the table on some of what Anchor's trying to do in this space to solve some of the challenges. But first, I want to welcome folks. Hi, Praying Daily. We're teaching young minds every day. And Alana, the Web3 girl's back. Alana, you continue to get most active new community member award. And Beam Me Up Now is back. You continue to get my favorite community member award. I love you, Beam. So, Krinza, I'm curious, before we dig into Anchor, what's your story? How did you fall down the Web3 rabbit hole? How did you end up where you are? Are there any twists and turns along the way?
Sure. I think my journey is I'm like pretty new into this space, but like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you are an OG or something." I was like, "No, no, no, please don't say that." So like in my previous life, as we were talking about this, in my previous life, I'm a 2020 graduate, by the way, so I'm like a pandemic student. And
Let's
then right
go.
after the graduation, I was like, and I was one of the struggling student in my university entire journey. I was like one of the only two girls in the entire batch. It was all boys group. Um,
That's real.
and then I think, yeah, and I think one of the things that I was struggling with was like, is this field for me? Like, is I was super interested in technology, but at the same time, I feel like coding is something which is like I can do that for sure, but I don't enjoy doing code. Right? There's like a lot of other things that go into the tech side of things. So I was like, I want to explore that. And one of my professor was like, "Don't worry, you can do product management because that's what product manage. Like if you suck at code, basically go for that. Like that has been the net."
just order
I'm so,
people around to go make code.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, okay, that's a good career choice. But then at the same time, my professor was like, but do you want to earn more? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like I don't mind money. And they're like, okay, AI and machine learning is something that you can go for. And I was like, oh, but I suck at math. But my professor was like, "Oh, it's okay. It's like it's just the hype about maths and data and like computer science. Like you don't have to be a genius about that. All you have to do with data science or AI, being an AI practitioner, is you basically have to understand like just 10 to 15 algorithms, one of which, like in practical, you can literally solve any business problem using linear regression." And I was like, interesting.
Wait, what? I
And
gotta go write this down.
yeah, I mean,
Because I don't know
and
what that
that's
means.
true.
And I feel like if I knew what it meant, that would be very powerful.
But that is so true because I worked for like 1.5 years as my capacity as a data scientist. And I was like, oh my God. Like every time there's a business problem at hand, I mean, you have to look into the data, like what kind of data is coming in. Is it numerical? Is it continuous data? Is it an image? But like that's like another discussion. But like that's how my career started. So I was before joining Web3, I was a data scientist. I've built and worked in AI product services. It was a fun ride, but then at one point I was like, okay, this is getting too much. Like it's a redundant work. Right? It's just too much data. Like I'm not
It's
enjoying the
too much data.
pipeline. Yeah. No, but it wasn't even like that much data. Now that I see that blockchain data, blockchain data
Right,
is
right,
just
right, right.
huge, huge,
Right.
right? So I was like, okay. But then uh, I don't know what happened. Someone just randomly airdropped me this developer DAO NFT. It was a random airdrop. So I was like, okay. And
It
then I
wasn't even
met
a
with
friend?
the, I have no, like, still, I have no idea.
That's so mysterious. I love this story.
Yeah. And this happened back in March 2022, right?
Wow.
So it's almost like 1 year for me.
This
This
is
March
coming
is
up
going
on
to
your
be my
anniversary.
anniversary. Yeah.
Wow.
So March, like early March, remember like around 3rd March or something, someone airdropped me that particular NFT, and I was like, okay, I know what developer DAO is, but I mean, let's see. Now I have NFT. Let's join the Discord channel, and then I, like within 1 week, I initiated this DevRel guild, and I started like championing for that, and now I'm like leading the DevRel guild. Like it was so quick. It happened like at like this kind of speed, and exactly. But you know what's the fun part?
Wow. Love developer DAO.
The same month, Anchor basically rolled out some sponsorship for for developer DAO members, like active ones, to travel to eat Dubai, right? Which was happening in March that year, right? And then it was me, Kemp, Josh, CS, Manny, and like all this group of people. We flew there, and that's where Anchor basically hired me. There, that's where it happened
That all happened
literally
in
in a
less than
month.
4 weeks?
Yes.
What? Okay, so anyone who's like, "Oh, Web3, it seems so cool. I don't know. It's really complicated. I don't really know anyone yet. I'll never get a job." Maybe you'll get a surprise airdrop, join a DAO, start
Yeah.
championing a guild, fly to Dubai, and get a full-time position in less than a month. It happens.
True. I mean, that happened with me. So now I'm at Anchor, and I'm really excited to be building. Like, it's. I feel like I'm one of the luckiest one. Like, I happen to be like at the right place at the right time. Like this always happens with me, right? And
Hmm.
like with what Anchor is building right now, it's. I think it's super important because we are laying the groundwork for uh, developers and enterprises to connect to the blockchain. So we are building a decentralized Web3 infrastructure. So we provide node infrastructure to developers, but not just that. We also provide dev tooling in terms of APIs, in terms of app chain. So if you're building some kind of studio, gaming studio, you might have to spin out your own blockchain because, of course, like layer one, layer two is like every blockchain that exists right now is at some kind of capacity, right? So you have to build your own ecosystem. So there's like a lot of things going on within the Anchor ecosystem. But today, what we're going to talk about is one of the topics that I'm really passionate about, or I just act to be passionate about because I once pursued this full time, and that is data, right? So we're going to see like what challenges developers used to face working in with Web2 data, and then versus blockchain data that we have in hand. So sounds great. Like, can I start? Like,
Yeah, go ahead and screen share and I'll throw it up and you can show us what you're talking about.
oh, I have to share the screen. Yeah.
Hmm. That is an absolutely wild story. I'm so glad I asked.
I have more stories. I have a lot of
I
stories.
have a similar story. I mean, as you're getting your screen share ready, I like started learning JavaScript in May 2021 and I was like, "What's an array?" And then in August joined Raid Guild. Shout outs to Raid Guild and was like, "I'm a front-end developer." And they were like, "You're not, but you'd be a good project manager," exactly like your story where you were like, "I don't know if I want to do all this code stuff." And then I transitioned to being a project manager and long story short, ended up meeting the ETH Denver team and have been there for just over a year now. So I'm coming up. I'm a few months ahead of you. My anniversary was in August, basically. So it can all happen very quickly to anyone who's aspiring to transition into this space and is looking for the stability of even a full-time role. It can all happen very quickly. Let's go ahead and throw your slides up. Mystery Science Theater. Is it okay if we're covering the
Awesome.
corner like this? Or do you want to like slightly
Yeah.
we could do this
I mean, I
and
don't mind.
we could do this. I just like playing with that.
But this, I mean, this is good. This is intuitive.
Good enough.
Okay. All right. So I think this stage has been set. We know what we are going to talk about, which is querying blockchain data using Anchor advanced APIs. But I think before we dive into that, I think one of the things that I want to talk about is how this space has grew in past 1 or 2 years, right? We have seen a lot of um, people joining into this space for the first time, buying their first NFTs, selling their first NFTs, interacting with wallets, interacting with blockchain, just exploring. A lot of developers, there has been a lot of excitement in the developer community, especially people who are coming from Web2 space, and they're trying to build like a lot of solutions. But I think one of the byproduct of all these activities, all these transactions that's happening over the blockchain is basically a lot of data, right? Uh, but then, the problem that boils down into this Web3 space is that, okay, now we have a lot of data. We have, and again, like one of the promises of blockchain is basically that it's permissionless, right? Which means that anyone anywhere in the world can have access to that particular blockchain data, and they can build certain stuff over uh, that data stream that's coming through the blockchain, right? But it's not that easy. Like in theory, it sounds so fun, like, oh, it's available, it's accessible. I can build like
So
AI
fun.
product and tools and this and
It's
that.
great. I can
It's,
just read all the data. It's so open. It's lovely.
yeah, I mean, do that.
Yeah,
Derek.
and to run a node, you have to download the full state since block one, and it takes like terabytes or whatever.
I'm too poor to even think about that.
Okay,
Like I
right.
cannot afford that.
Stateless client soon. Just like the merge. It only took a few years. We'll get stateless clients soon.
True. So this is one of the problem. Like, and it's an interesting problem to have. Like, oh, we are crying over just because we have a lot of data and we don't know how to get access to that, right? And I think one of the other thing to understand at this point is the role of APIs in front end development in general, because we are at the hour of talking about front end development. And I think one of the things that APIs allows front end developers to do is that it helps communicate front end with the back end, and it adds a data layer between these two basically poles, right? um, and I think it's super important. And one of the like I recently like rolled out a tweet and I was saying like product tip just built a lot of APIs and SDKs, and it got like it just that tweet just blew up, and I realized like why a lot of people resonate with that particular statement is that because when you talk to a web2 developer, right, one of the things they'll say is that, okay, we don't understand what's exactly going on the blockchain. Like we don't understand the data structure, we don't understand how to query. And if even if we want to query something, like if we want to, let's say a developer might want to query a metadata of an NFT, right? They're like, okay, this is something that we want to fetch from the blockchain, but we cannot envision the outcome, right? But what developers know exactly is how to integrate an API, irrespective of whether they are a Web3 developer or Web2 developer. So we're kind of minimizing the barrier to entry in terms of the development space, right? So I think that's like one of the products that I'm like super into advocating for, like build APIs and SDKs, right? And so today we're going to explore what we are building at Ankr. And one of the products that we have recently launched is basically advanced APIs that we're going to dive into very soon. I think we are like almost done with the introduction. Like I literally covered my entire life story. If,
Sure, sure.
if you want to like know a lot of other stories, I mean, feel free to DM. I have like I can give you like a snippet, like I can throw like some alphas about like what happened with me. Like one of the stories I can tell you if you DM me and ask about Ankr is that I once jumped off a moving bus. I
Off
don't
of a
want to say like what
moving
moving
bus.
bus. Yeah. I wanted to experiment with a physics law, like where do I fall,
Uh-huh.
but it turned out to be yeah, it was an
Well,
embarrassing
onto the
moment.
ground was the answer.
Yeah, but like which way? Like you fall
Which way?
forward or you like it was like I don't know.
Uh-huh. I get it.
I'm
Like
like super random. Like
yeah, no, I used to be a physics teacher. I'm very interested in the question.
oh my god, okay.
Recreate the experiment, reproduce the results.
If only my teacher was nice enough to answer my question in the class, I would
Yeah,
not
you wouldn't
have to
have to
do
jump
that.
out of a moving bus. Yeah. That's their
Exactly.
fault.
Yeah, their fault. But yeah, moving back to where we were, um, I think one of the challenge, like we are exactly talking about, like one of the challenges we face in terms of data, especially in Web2, is not having enough data to work with, right? But that is not true in case of blockchain because again, blockchain is permissionless and anyone can have access to that data to build stuff, right? But the answer is not simple because blockchain data is just a mess. And we're going to dive into like why. I'm calling like blockchain data a mess.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, it is like, just trust me. I'll be like, okay, yeah, I don't have references, but just trust me. But it's really, really complicated. It's really complicated. And if anyone here is a builder, and if you have ever worked with data and fetching data without any tools, like, all of the solution, like all of the issues that uh, as a developer that you might have to face, right? But we're gonna cover like some basic, I think, the core issues that we are facing as an ecosystem in the Web3 space in terms of when we talk about data challenges, right? So these are like the four main challenges right now. So one of the biggest challenges faced by developers, when it comes to querying, is that there's just too much data, right? Because millions and billions of transactions, millions and billions of interactions and blocks are being added to the blockchain every day. And it can be difficult for developers to even know where exactly to start accessing this data, right? Because archival, when we talk about historical data, it's just too much. Like, where are you going to store that? Like, are you going to spin your own node? If that, it's just too expensive, right? But if you don't want to do that, I mean, there's like a lot of leadership decisions that goes into that if you're a company, if you're an enterprise solution. So other challenges is basically the complexity of data structure, right? Now, if we talk about traditional databases, it was holy grail. Like, literally, the databases were like well organized. It was simple, hierarchical. You can even copy that entire database into an Excel sheet. Try copying blockchain data over an Excel sheet. I'll wait. Like, your
Oh
computer,
wait.
your laptops, your computer will just
Just
shut down. Like,
explode.
it will
Yeah.
blow up.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that these are basically like all of the things that was pretty easy for us, pretty accessible for us in terms of data in web 2. It's the complete opposite thing that we are seeing as a developers when we talk about querying blockchain data from blockchain, basically, right? And I think the most important part is that we are not just talking about one blockchain. We are not just talking about ethereum only, because if you're a developer, if you're a company, you have to realize the fact that developers and users want to interact with multiple blockchains. Users want to interact with multiple um, platforms, multiple protocols that might be building on a different blockchain layers, right? So that means that the aspect of multi-chain is super important. And if we are talking about multi-chain, that means that you have to fetch that data not just from one blockchain, but like many blockchains. So it's just the data just keeps coming. It's like never stopping,
Wow.
right? And so the other thing is basically the data indexing, right? Now, again, like talking about figuring out how to actually query the data is one challenge. And then once you've figured out like which method to use, where to really start pulling the data, you actually have to deal with a lot of technical details. Like, you have to figure out node to connect with, you have to figure out the correct block number, transaction hash, what kind of format your query. I mean, basically, you have to write a whole query, which will be like, again, like that would be a problem as well. So it's like it's just mess in terms of working with data and blockchain data itself as well. And I think that's what leads me to just introducing you guys to like the APIs that we are building right now, and we have named it Ankr Advanced APIs. So again, like yeah, kind of, it's basically, I think one of the things we when we were building this was that we did our due diligence to make sure to understand the trends that we are seeing, like what kind of data developers want to fetch from the blockchain, right? And then we categorized it into three buckets. So one kind of data that developers are interested is about NFTs. So developers might want to fetch NFTs, NFT metadata, NFT addresses, NFT smart contracts, these buying and selling, the prices, and all of these data comes under the NFT API part, right? And then a lot of developers also wanted to understand the interactions between the tokens when you do exchanges, when you buy a token, the cryptocurrencies built on a particular blockchain. So how many number of so if we have, like, let's take an example of Ethereum, right? A lot of other cryptocurrencies have been built on top of Ethereum, right? So we want to developers might want to do like some kind of data fetching in terms of the token um, aspect. And then we had like query API, where we basically figured out that developers are, this makes like a this is like a short, this is very like tight knit community of developers who wants to query or dive more into the logs and blogs of the blockchain. So let's say ETH get logs, right? Like that's one of the example that developers might want to fetch. So we have like categorized all of the data points or the kind of data developers might want to explore into three buckets, right? So today for this presentation or workshop, we're going to talk about one of the endpoints from the token API, and we're going to see like how you can build or get started building with that. Now, okay, so one of the things that we talked about is that we are not just talking about one blockchain when we talk about fetching data from the blockchain, right? And that's something that we have tried to figure out here. So the the Ankr Advanced API is basically not just it doesn't work for just Ethereum only. It will work for like 8 different blockchains. So once you hit an endpoint, right, it will automatically fetch all of the data from all these 8 blockchain, which includes Ethereum, Polygon, Optimism, Phantom, BSC, Chain, Syscoin, Avalanche, right? So all of these, like just imagine like if the APIs were not into the equation, you have to first set up a node. First you have to figure out like what kind of data you want to fetch, and then you have to repeat all of that process for each one of the blocks, each one of the blockchains, right? So it's just too much work for a developer. So we have kind of with these APIs, we are doing the heavy work for you all, so you don't have to. And I think it's a good point when we talk about abstraction. It's a different kind of abstraction, right? We are abstracting the logic, we are abstracting the data from the developer or the development process, so that it's easier for a front end developer to just integrate an API and then display it using like minimal code. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a good point in terms of the abstraction of logic and data layer. So this is basically the endpoint, which is rpc.ankr.com/multi-chain. So if you want to start making calls, so this is the API where every call will hit. Um, and yeah, I mean, by far, like we have been talking, I've been talking a lot, and I've not, like, I feel like at this point, like we should just dive into a little bit of code in terms of
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
how
I
you
want to
can quick
see
start.
how, because you're talking about abstraction and what we do and don't have to look at. So I think an example is really going to start to dial this in.
Exactly. And it's so funny, like we are talking like with all of these, like I mean we have understand the challenges, right? We know there's a lot of data in blockchain. So in terms if we envision right now at this step where you haven't seen the code part, you don't know how APIs work yet, how to integrate that, right? It even seems like a lot of work to us as a developer. You might be thinking, oh, even if there's an API, just because it will push data, it will pull data from like 8 different chains, the integration would be tough for them, right? But like the next few slides will just change your complete mind. You'll be like, oh my God, what is this? Like,
Okay.
what happened? Like, is it a magic or what? Because
Okay.
we're literally gonna come, like, we're gonna pull data from 8 different blockchain in just 3 steps. That's it. You don't have to do any extra work. You don't have to do all the lines of coding. Like, no extra work needed, no node maintenance at all. I think that's a good point. Like, you don't have to set up your own nodes because we are providing that. We have set up all of the nodes for you. So all you have to care about is just plug this particular API and you're good, right? So in today's scope, I think one of the use case we can see is that, let's say as a developer, you're building a DeFi app or anything like, and you're just building something, so a dApp where you have to fetch token holders by contract. So let's say if I'm a developer DAO member, right? I want to create a snapshot. So I just want to quickly see like who are the token holders and how much amount of tokens they are holding, right? So if you want to see that, how we can do that, right? So one of the endpoints that we give under the token API is the get token holders. So we're going to see how you can do that use in just three steps. Okay, so the first step is simple. Like all you have to do is install the package, which is basically Ankr.js. Now, Ankr.js is the JavaScript library, which will interact with the advanced API, and it will give you all of the data sources that you need, right? So you can npm it or you can yarn it. So that's like one line of code, right? You just have to install the package, and then the second step is you have to if you're I mean, you can start your Next.js project or React app, right? All you have to do is you have to create a JavaScript file or a TypeScript file, and you have to initialize the provider. Now, I mean, if you're a premium account, if you're a premium user, all you have to do is you have to put your key, API key. Otherwise, we offer a free service as well, but it's rate limited. But you can, like, if you are just trying out, if you wanna, I mean, build for like a small group of people or a small group of users, you can easily build something with a free plan,
That's
right? So
nice.
this is just two more lines of code,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then what you have to do is just call one of the supported methods. In this case, it's get token holders. And you're just passing two parameters. That's it. You have to pass the contract address for which you have to get all of the data of the holders and basically the balances. And then you have to define what blockchain you want to fetch from. And this blockchain parameter is optional. Like if you want to fetch from all of the blockchain, all of the 8 blockchain network, right? You just cut this option down. Or if you want to specify like, oh, you have to fetch only from Polygon and Ethereum, then just create an array and that's it, a list, right? And that's it. Like this is just the three steps that will help you fetch all of the data from across 8 different blockchain in just how many line of code? Like 3 to 6 line of code. Easy peasy.
Do you mean if it's the same address on several chains, or can you clarify what you mean by being able
So
to
I can
access eight
show you. Okay,
chains?
I have a demo. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so basically what happens with the blockchain is that
Oh, sorry.
uh,
May I interrupt you? We had an interesting question.
oh, okay.
Tinta HD, welcome. Tin asks, can you track RPC calls by country? I think I see what they're getting at.
So individually as a developer, we don't provide you the dashboard, but if you head over to anchor.com/RPCs, you'll be able to see, if you click Ethereum RPC, you'll be able to see like where the traffic is coming from. So there's a dashboard that we provide you with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But yeah, I think talking about your question, so what exactly happens is that with the blockchain, even like if you don't specify the blockchain, like right here we have said that we only want token holders from, like, Ethereum is the network where the contract address that we are trying to fetch is from. Like we are specifying it. You don't have to do it, like it will by default understand, like the code will by default just track, okay, this particular contract address is coming from an Ethereum blockchain. So let's say developer DAO code token is being built on top of Ethereum, right? That's the network, right? So you don't have to specify it, but okay, it's a good practice to have it mentioned. Otherwise it will just fetch it. And I think one of the things I can do right now is I can show you a demo of the tab that I've created. And I also have a full guide on this. So if you're a developer, I can even share the guide link with you all. Give me a sec.
Mm-hmm. Bye, Praying Daily. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I'm in the docs already starting to
Can
get.
you see
Yeah.
the screen?
Wait, where'd it
See,
go?
so this is
And
something.
there we go. Mm-hmm.
Now, so this is basically something that you can create using the token API that we were just going through. So what you can do is all you have to do is just add the ERC token here. So let's find out um, what's the developer DAO token address.
And then
What's the code token address token? Okay, so this is basically the developer DAO. I'm going to paste it. So this is the developer DAO's code token address, right? So once you um, uh, basically input that, what happens is that it will fetch you all of the token holders' addresses, and then the number amount of balance that they are holding. So this is basically code tokens, the number of code tokens they are getting, and this is the token holder's address,
I
right? And
see.
it's a good example. So if you want to create a snapshot, all you have to do is just copy this, and then this is something that you can literally copy and paste it to your Excel files, not the actual raw blockchain data. There's no way you can do that.
Hmm.
But if you wanna go over the code, I
Well, yeah. What's
can.
the return? I would love to see. Like, is I don't know a lot about querying or post or get or anything like that. I'm sort of aware of what I don't know, and so if you can, especially for like the kinds of learning we do here on Front End Wednesdays, walk us through what's happening under the hood here. And half the people watching might not have ever done a request of any kind. So, to the extent you can say how this is similar or different from a Web 2 type interaction with a server, that'd be really useful.
Sure. What I'm gonna do is let's go over um, this example tab that we have created that I just demoed, right? And we can see like what's happening, how you can integrate this particular API into the project, and how easy it is for you to like spin out such a project in really like in like 15 to 20 minutes max, right? So what we are doing here is that we are trying to build a token holder viewer app, just like an NFT viewer app, right? But if we talk about NFT viewer app, you have to use one of the endpoints from the NFT API, which would be get NFTs by owner, right? But here we want to see who are the token holders. So if there's a cryptocurrency, like if let's say there's a Dogecoin, and I want to see who are the token holders and how much Dogecoin they are holding, right? So this is basically the premise of our example. So what you have to do is you just have to spin a Next.js project, right? And this is basically going to be the tech stack. The project would be a Next.js project. You can use some Div and CSS for the styling, and then the Ankr JS SDK that will be using to interact with the advanced APIs as a data source, right? And this is going to be something which we will get by the end of this entire project, right? Again, like first you have to just set up your Next.js starter project by creating a repository, and all you have to do is just yarn dev, and it will give you like one of the shiny Next.js like new the display that they have going on. And this is something that we already see. Like first step of using the Anchor Advanced API is basically um, installing the package. So the very first thing you'll do once you have set up a Next.js project is you have to yarn. Basically, you can yarn it or npm it. This you have to install this package, which is Anchor.js, right? Now, once this is done, you'll have you can create a new file, or you can use like existing files. And what we're going to do here is we're going to initialize the Anchor provider, right? And you can do it by importing Anchor scan provider from the Anchor.js. And then what you are doing right here, if you want to use the freemium plan, you can just create an empty constructor, right? And then what we have to do is we're going to create a function basically, but you don't have to do all of the logic building of how the token holders will be fetched, because that endpoint is something that we provide you with. So you're going to start like you this is some you are creating basically a function here, right? And what you are doing is that you want two things out of this function. You want the holder's information, like the holder's address, and then the holder count, which is basically how much amount of particular token a particular holder is holding, right? And this is the endpoint. And these are the parameters that we are passing, which is contract address. So in our example, we passed developer DAO's code token address because we want to see like who are the token holders and how much amount of tokens that they are holding. And then the blockchain, which uh, that particular token is being built on top of. And then we're going to return this holders and holder count.
Are these two separate arrays? One is an array of strings and one is an array of numbers?
This one.
Yeah, well, no, the return, because I'm not
Yeah,
very
yeah,
good at
yeah,
like
yeah.
destructuring the data we're getting back. So when you do the like the
True.
parentheses and the holders count, I'm trying to make sure we can
Yeah,
visualize
this is
what we're
just a
getting back
return.
here.
Yeah, this is, we are getting out of this, we're going to get a holders, the list of holders addresses, and then we're going to get the sum of basically how much amount of tokens that a particular holder is getting. So there's going to be like, if you imagine in terms of data or in terms of
Yeah.
table, imagine that you have two rows. First row is the holder addresses, and then the second row is how much amount of particular token that they are holding,
Oh, I see.
right? So it's
So
going to
we
be like a
they're
list of,
not paired, but they're paired by which index they're at, like at the
yeah,
fourth
we, because
index.
we are, yeah, we want
Okay.
these two things. Like if we don't want the count, like we can just remove that from here,
Okay.
right? So this is basically, this is all the work that you have to do from the Ankr advanced API side. Now you can build on, like on top of this particular logic, and what you can do is that you can spin some kind of front end, you can use styling and stuff. But before we do that, one of the things we are doing in this particular project, like one of the things we are doing is that just because we understand like from the API, we are getting holders information and we are getting the count of the tokens that they have, right? But when we are building a production level dApp, we want more. We want to make sure that we have some kind of loading going on when there's a data fetching happening. We want to make sure that there's some kind of error statements and um, the errors that are being addressed. So for that particular reason, what we can do, like this is a completely optional step, but what you can do is, this is what we have done for this particular project, is we have created a custom hook within the project, and we are calling this custom hook use token holders.
Okay.
Now we're going to see like what this particular thing is doing, and what it will do is that it's going to create a React component that will fetch token holders information from the particular given contract address. That's something that we are already fetching from the API that we have going on in the above step. But at the same time, what we are trying to do is that, when you show, like if I again, like if I pull out that particular website that we have built, in the initial stage, it's not blank. There's already a default address placed and some kind of data that you are able to see, right? I can even drop the links so that people can try. I don't know
On the
which.
bottom left, the private chat. Bottom left.
Okay.
And then I can go
So
paste it for
this is
you.
the link.
Thank you.
So if you click on that particular link, you'll be able to see that basically this is not like, there's something going on already, right? So this entire information is, we are saving or we are storing them in a form of state, right? And so
Okay.
that's what we are doing. We are setting state variables to store the holder and holder counts, and also some kind of loading logic and the error statement, right? So if when the data is being fetched, what you have to do, like let's say set the loading status to true. So which means that when there's some kind of fetching activity happening, just show users that okay, it's loading, it's something happening, like activity is happening. Like that's a good practice in terms of front end, because you don't want your users to be blind, like what's going on behind the scenes. Like that's the true essence of front end. Like show users what's happening behind the scenes, but in like do as much abstraction as possible. Right, so this entire hook that you like we have created is to basically return an object which will not only hold holders information and holders count, right, but it will also hold a loading status and an error statement, right, if just in case something goes down or a node is not working, like anything that happens, right. And then all you have to do is just index.tx work, like just front end CSS, HTML thing, right? We have already inputted a default contract address so that this page is not blank when someone lands to that, right? You can always just change an address here. If we go with the developer DAO's code token address, and so this is, it will fetch you all of the token holders, and the list is too long, which is not surprising. Um, but yeah, this is how it works, right? So this is basically some HTML work, like you're doing, like you have built um, this form, and then you are basically showing your data that you have fetched in terms of table, and that's it. Like it's literally 5 steps. Yeah, it's 5 steps, and if you want to count this particular step as a sixth step, which is yarn dev, you just have to run the environment.
So recap, prerequisites, enough familiarity with React and Next to be able to squint your eyes and sort of know how to navigate your file structure and know what JSX is.
I feel like file structure is easy to understand. Like there's nothing like we are not using the already existing file structure. What we are doing here, like for most of the files, you can create your own files, because again, like when we are coding, like I personally like to not make sure that there's, if there's a logic, it ends up in a different file. Like like every logic should have their own real estate within the project, right? So all of the logic that we are building here, I have a repo up, so I can share the link for of the GitHub repo as well, and you'll see that each logic will have its own file that I'm linking at the end of this particular HTML file.
Can you show how, so for example, utils.ts is the TypeScript file where it seems like you're having the Ankr do some of the
Okay,
heavy
I'm gonna
lifting?
show you. Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's a good catch. So first file that we'll create is utils.tx, the TypeScript file. This is where we're gonna create like a token holders retrieval function using Ankr Advanced API. The three step that we went through when we were talking, when we were on the slides, right? So this is the first file that we will create. This will give you holder and holders count. That's it, right? The second file we're going to create is basically called hooks.tx, right? And in this file, what you are doing is that instead of just holder and holders count, you are also adding loading statement and the error statement, right? So this is a custom hook that we have created, a custom function that we have created, because we want to go modular when we are, like we want to go with classes and formats. So it's like easier for me to like change, like wake up one day and I'll be like, oh, I don't want this, right? So I don't have to change like a particular file from the, like just one file of the project. Like I'll be like, okay, this is one file, I can just delete it, and like I can comment that out, and that's it. Like this is a good way to code in a modular format, like have each logic separated in different files. So these are like two files, and then index.tsx is basically the file that's already in the structure under pages section, right? So this is basically the file you have to change. So you don't have to be like super familiar with this structure. The only file you have to change is the index. Otherwise, all of the two other files is something that you will be creating on your own, right? So that's like, I think, but yeah, in terms of familiarity, like you should know Next.js, like you should be able to uh, start an Next.js project. Tailwind CSS, if you want to style, like this is super basic. Like this is, there's nothing going on here. Like it's not, it's basic black font, it's like literally, I don't have like a better word other than basic. Um, but then yeah, if you want to do like some kind of styling, then go for, like, you can do more with Tailwind CSS or even all of the other things. And that's it. Like the Anchor JS SDK is something that you might have understood by now. It's just three-step thing. You have to install the package, you have to initialize the provider, and then you have to add it into a function, just like we did in the utils file, right? First thing, we are going to, like again, like just repeating what we have gone so far. First thing is that you have to install the package through CMD or terminal, right? And then you have to initialize this project, initialize the Anchor scan provider, and you're going to create a function where you're going to use this particular hook, React hook, or the API endpoint that we have created, and you just have to pass just two parameters and it will give you holders and holders count. That's it. Like that's basically it. And it will fetch you all of the data that you would have never be able to query if the APIs were not there, and if you have to work on your own with the blockchain data. Is it the expression where like mind blown, or you're like,
No, I just so I the context is I started learning JavaScript in May a little over a year ago, and I am my superpower is being aware of the limits of my own understanding. And so I'm like, okay, great. Like I know just for me as a learner trying to like embody this receiving all this knowledge and keep track of like that's why I wanted to zoom in on prerequisites, for example. Like this will be
hmm,
easy for you if you already know what Next.js
yeah,
is. Like if you
yeah.
don't know what Next.js is, you're screwed because you're jumping into like, why can't I save a variable the way I expect? And it's like, oh, you don't know React, you don't understand state and hooks and all
Yeah,
that.
I feel like you should be able to know some kind of, this is not a super beginners kind of thing. Like you should be a Web2 developer, I would say. So that means that you should be able to comfortably code in JavaScript. You know what state is, like inbuilt functions that we are using to code a lot of things. I think that's super important. And then just go for APIs and understanding how we are fetching data. So yeah, again, it's not a beginner's thing. It's like, I understand that not a lot of people, like, you can obviously copy the code and build the exact same file and change some CSS.
Yeah.
But then if you really want to understand, if you want to really code, if you really want to build and ship products, I feel like there should be um, some kind of prerequisite understanding that you have to go through.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal of this Front End Wednesday series is to get a sense of what the basic pieces are. It's a bit like a skill tree in a video game where it's like, okay, like I got to start probably in the context of front end development. There are many ways to do it. I mean, some people are like, yeah, Rust and WASM, like who needs JavaScript anymore? But it's like, well, maybe we're going to stick with like our JavaScript and then you're going to go to React in all likelihood. And then you're probably going to go to Next.js. You should probably fit TypeScript in there somewhere along the way just to make it a little easier and type safe. You'll probably do something like a Tailwind, whether you want to go full custom with your Tailwind or
Hmm.
your Tailwind UI for some of their pre-built components. And when it comes to data, and then we finally get to where we started the conversation, okay, now you know how to make a website. What do you want to put on the website? And this is where Ankr steps in and says, lucky for you, I make it very easy to check out ERC20s. And you mentioned NFTs earlier, ERC 721s.
Oh,
Is there support
do you
for
want to see?
1155s yet?
Yeah, I mean that's basically NFTs. We also support
Right.
ENS. There's like a lot of things going on. Let me show you a demo.
Cool.
This is going to be super quick.
Great.
Okay. So if you just change this, like if you just remove this token slash holders from the URL, you'll be basically land to a NFT viewer tab. So instead of you using the get token holders endpoint, all you have to do is use get NFTs by owner endpoint, and you'll be able to create this NFT viewer app basically for a particular wallet address. So if I add, let's say, what's my address? Like, what's Vitalik's address?
Does it have ENS support, this app?
So this is basically my. Um, this is my DevDAO NFT that someone just airdropped me.
So wild.
Here it goes, full circle.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know why. Oh my god, I have like some random stuff in my wallet. But yeah,
Getting
this is
spammed.
super simple. Like you just, I am.
So what is this method called? Get NFTs by address or something like that.
Get NFTs by owners. So
Hmm.
basically, I'm the owner. So you have to input my address to get the NFT. So that's the logic. So get NFTs by owner is the endpoint.
Wow. This
That's
is
it. You'll be able to get
I mean, for
this.
folks that have used Zapper.fi or even just Etherscan to check out the contents of your own wallet or even somebody else's. I mean, we're all making our Twitter handles our ENSs, so you could just go look at what NFT somebody has or like how much code Krinza has.
True. Oh my.
It's a fair amount. It's like you could make that kind of dApp yourself with this kind of tooling, and it wouldn't be too hard. Like just an input field, and then you query the data, and then you just render it however you want, whether that's in cards or in some kind of table. So part of my like theory of learning, because the entire ETH Denver community and Sporked Out ecosystem is around biddling things, right? That's the whole point of this conversation, is to learn how to biddle things. And so one thing I like to say is that the beginning of that journey, if you're a self-taught developer like a lot of us are, is a very, very steep learning curve of Web 2 development, Web 3 development, and at least being conversational in a bunch of these pieces so that when you go to interact with another team, for example, at ETH Denver, and you're like, hey, I'm a designer, and then your dev is like, okay, well, when I go, I need like you to mock up the connect wallet button or something. You should at least be aware of some of the like Web 3 front end stuff to be able to participate as a designer. In other words, you kind of got to know everything a little bit to be able to play whatever role you're going to play. And that's a really steep set of learning curves. Like it'll probably take someone who doesn't have a CS background months to get to the place where your tutorial would be appropriate for them. And do it. I mean, it would only take
Just
you a
do it.
few
I think,
months. As
yeah,
far
I
as
mean,
life paths
coding
go,
has been.
like you could do it. It's just hard.
That's true. I mean, coding is hard to do. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, it's hard
Yeah.
for everyone. It has been for me. Like, at one point, I was
Yeah.
like, I cannot do this, and I'm like, I went to my dad. I was like, I don't want to. I want to stay
What
in
do I not?
technology, but I
Yeah.
cannot code. Like, what do I
Right.
do? And I went to professors. The field of technology, like technology as whole, it's like the realm is so huge. Like you don't have to, like, I mean, in terms of building, when we say we have to
Mm.
build and ship stuff, coding is not just a one way. There are other tools. There are no code tools that are available. Feel free to use that. There's no, I mean, I think one of the drawbacks of like technology, like the tech industry, is that there's a lot of gatekeeping in terms of narrative. So
Mm.
someone will say, oh, you are not a super shadowy developer if you don't know this particular framework. Like, this is not how things
The
work. If
shadowy
I'm able
supercoder.
to,
Yeah.
I'm not, guys. I'm
You're
not.
not a
And
shadowy supercoder.
I'm not.
Oh.
But yeah, like that's the point. Like there's like a lot of narratives. Like just use all of these tools, like all the tools,
Yeah.
even if it's a no-code tool, just get your
Right.
thing done. Like ship it. Like
But I
even if
want to.
you're
I totally appreciate, by the way, you trying to say you don't need to fully understand something to be able to use it,
no, yeah,
but you need to understand enough to know how to use it. And this is where I think
yeah,
there's a weird transition point at the learning journey, because you need to know enough JavaScript to understand the basic data structures. Like, okay, what's an array? What's an object? What's a key value pair? And just sort of understand how the syntax goes. But then there's this weird giant jump that most people make at some point along their learning journey where they start introducing abstraction. I think React is the most obvious example, where it's like you could write your whole front end in JavaScript, but most people do React. And one of the reasons they do that is that it solves a bunch of problems that you would have if you were only doing it in JavaScript. But in order to jump all the way over there, you need to understand the rules that it places on you in terms of an abstraction, like state. Like you can no longer just say like let x equals 5. Sorry, you need to use hooks to keep track of the getter and the setter for x. And like states being handled at a higher or lower level. And there's this whole other steep learning curve that solves a bunch of problems you're not even aware of yet. So in terms of Ankr, sometimes the learning experience of working with a tool like this is like, okay, great. On the one hand, this is only a couple lines of code. But on the other hand, it's a black box. Like Provider has
Yeah.
so many useful methods on it. And so our role as a developer who wants to use it is to just stare at the docs and begin to internalize like a wizard learning spells, like what tools are at your disposal. That's the hard part, knowing enough to be able to use it. But once you know enough to be able to use it, it's super easy to use and super powerful. So I just wanted to highlight like the pros and cons along the way, whether it's Ankr or whether it's whatever. There's this
True.
really hard beginning part of like understanding what abstraction somebody made to try to improve your quality of life, but along the way create yet another sort of like arbitrary human construct of like, and this is this thing called state, and this is this thing called a custom hook. And you're like, what the hell is a custom hook? Why isn't it enough for me to just keep track of an array? Like, what is this giant thing I need to wrap it in? Okay, now I understand what a custom hook is. It updates state for me. That's lovely. And now I can just like fly. So the two-part learning journey is understanding what the hell you're looking at. That's like the learning part. And then once you know how to use these things, to have your set of tools at your fingertips, like Next.js, bada boom, Tailwind, bada boom, Ankr, bada boom, and you can just like make stuff really fast.
Wow.
So I wanted to sort of honor the fact that this stuff's really hard to learn in the beginning. And then in exchange for that steep learning curve, you're able to do lots of really cool things really, really quickly once you cross over that sort of threshold of like, why doesn't it ever work? Once you're at like, oh, it works and I know how to debug, then you can do insane things. So, well, and this is true for front end. This is true for smart contract development. This is true for all development, machine learning, AI, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's true. That's super true. And I think that's like one of the, again, like I think my story of getting into this particular field just resonate a lot. Like when you're starting out without any know-how, without I don't know like why I went for computer science in the first place. I was like, oh, it would be cool, but then I went for a class and I was like, okay, what is this? Like, what's going on? Right? It's hard. Just know this is hard. And there's going to be days where you're like, oh, there's like a lot of things to learn. And there's like each day there's a new framework being launched, new updates coming up. So that there is a steep learning curve, and you have to pass that to be able to leverage all of these dev toolings that a lot of companies and a lot of builders are building. And that's one reason why it's called dev tooling, because it's basically for developers. This is super random. Yeah, cut this down.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
live
we'll
stream.
cut it in post. Yeah. I also wanted to give a shout out to your writing because you have a mirror where you've been writing about
Look at
subDAOs.
the art. It's basically a gallery right now.
It's so good.
It's
This
so
is some
good.
curated stuff. So folks can check out mirror.xyz, Krinza.eth. I put the link here at the bottom. I appreciate what you're trying to do, which is the very challenging task of writing about an extremely technical topic. Literally, your most recent one was like, how are ZK Starks different from ZK Snarks? And that is a comically classic Web3 kind of sentence where everyone in the world is like, I don't understand and I don't care. And you are trying to write an article that's like, trust me, this is worth knowing. And I'm going to do my best to explain it and assume you're not somebody researching and developing ZK Snarks or ZK Starks, right? That's really,
Yeah.
really hard.
You
In
know,
other words,
literally
technical writing.
every ZK article I ever read, there's one like there goes a disclaimer which says math included. My disclaimers are basically no math included. Read it, understand this stuff because it's super important. Like this is going to be like the next emerging technology, and I'll do my best to be able to break down all of the like I literally, if you click on the ZK Snark article, I
Mm-hmm.
literally broke each word of S and N and A and
Yeah,
R
you
and A to
defined
B
your
for you
terms.
to be able to understand. Like
Yeah.
I'm just trying my best. But yeah, it's
You're
just
doing great,
fun to like
actually.
explore new technology. Like I just love that
Yeah, for
emerging
what it's worth,
technology.
I collected the article. For folks who don't know, on
Yay!
mirror.xyz, you can collect the article. And this is what Krinzer's referring to. We got diagrams. We got the breakdown of all the different parts. And by the end, I was like, oh, cool. You get to skip the trusted setup part. That does seem like an advantage. And the computation's better. All right, I'm sold. So, by the way, if folks don't know anything about ZK Starks or Snarks and want a primer on zero knowledge stuff, last week's Theory Thursdays, we had Tony Olendo on, who did a fantastic job
He's
explaining
so good.
what a ZK Snark is, and like through this the like Alibaba cave analogy that always gets
Ah, yeah.
used. So go check out the recording on that one from last week if you're interested. Is there anything else you want to say to folks? I'll as you think about like your closing statements here, invite folks to connect with you on Twitter. You're at kprasla, and Ankr is of course
Yeah.
at Ankr.
Yeah, you can just tweet me out. Like if you have any questions, if you want more tutorials, I mean, just go head over to anchor.com/docs. There's like a bundle of tutorials, guides, articles, blogs that you'll be able to find. Just build on that. If you want more examples, if you're building something you're stuck, just tweet at me, DM me, or even if you want to chat, like I'm open to like for a coffee chat or something. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and you can start that DM by saying, "Did you say that you jumped out of a moving bus?"
Yes,
And Krinza
that's
will tell you that
basically,
story,
yeah.
and that's how she'll
I
know you
might just
listen.
end up writing a Mirror article, like who knows?
Great, I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming and explaining how Ankr is trying to make the development experience better for front end devs, how hard it is to work with blockchain data. And I want to give a lot of gratitude to everyone behind the scenes at the Ankr team who's been putting a lot of thought into how best abstract away all those problems so that as front end biddlers, we can just say like provider.get token balances. Thanks so much for the array, and move on with our lives and not have to think about it or run a node or like, it seems pretty easy. And I also want to say that the freemium model is a really nice structure. If you want to try something out at ETH Denver 2023, if you want to spin up something for your favorite DAO, all possible to do for free right now. And then if you have the good problem of getting rate limited because your thing is so useful and a bunch of people are using it, then you could just upgrade and keep rolling the
No,
way.
I have an alpha. Okay, I have an alpha. So if you're a developer DAO member, we are gonna do like a perks giveaway, which is basically we are giving out credits for builders to build for all of these hackathons that are going to happen for 8th Global. So if you are a developer DAO member, uh, just wait. Like we're gonna announce something for you all.
Okay. Can people just DM you and beg if they're not a developer DAO member?
Yeah, I'll just make sure that you end up becoming a developer DAO member.
Great.
We'll sort
That's
the
all you
code
do.
tokens out.
Great. Thank you again for joining, Krinza. I appreciate you and your time.
Thank you.
I hope you have a very restful sleep. I know it's in
Yeah,
the middle of the
now
night for you.
this is literally for me, like now it's GM. Like this is
We
the true
crossed
meaning of
over.
GM.
It's GM somewhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Krinza. Have a great rest of your day. And will you please join me? As
Bye.
always, we wish everyone a great day by saying bye.
Bye.